Well, we're at 47 members. That's wonderful for all of the things that we have to go through to get here. And John Ball has a tail.
Yeah, I know it. She has gotten extremely fond of Zoom.
He's done better at keeping it hidden in the past, but yeah.
Yeah. She has a very hard life.
Yes, I'm sure. We've hit 50 people. That's wonderful. 50 and climbing.
Hey, Rob Phillips, how do you get to go incognito? You don't have your name on your box.
I see a name.
Oh, there it is. Now it's there. Okay.
I unmuted. Did that help bring it up?
Yeah, it did actually. I don't know why, but it did.
Yeah.
I think
discovered
Dwayne cleaning his glasses might work better.
Yeah, I discovered I didn't have the video on last week when I was here, so I'm a newbie to this whole Zoom thing. So you missed my smiling face last week, but I'm sure that's fine.
Oh,
Hi, Quinn.
love that.
Rod Fitch, hello. Mina, is it Mina or Mina Worthy?
Fine, Nina.
It's Mina. Hi.
Mina. Okay, thank you. Wanted to say it right. Leanne Antonio. Alan Opfer, hello, welcome. Quinn David, very nice.
Hi, Linda Kaminsky.
Well, all right, it is 12:15, and so if all of you could mute who are not speaking, and with the exception of our greeters. So welcome to Rotary, everyone. Today is Thursday, and you know what that means. We've got another great program ready for you today. So to get us started, to say hello are our greeters. We've got Jeff Scott, and we've got Becky Scholl. Please say hello.
Hi, welcome to Rotary. It looks like an exciting show or exciting program today, and excited to have all of you here.
Yes, welcome everyone. It's been fun to even see you come on board here.
Well, thank you very much for greeting today. We've got two guests joining us, both Amanda Ryder and Bob Harrison. Welcome to Rotary, and thank you for coming on today. To get us started with our music, we've got a presentation from Kate Loeb. Kate.
Kate Loeb with the Star Spangled Banner.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we've hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight for the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave for the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Wow, that is absolutely incredible. Thank you, Kate, for sharing your talent with us. I just have goosebumps again. We've had some pretty exceptional musical programs during this Zoom time, and I am just so thrilled that all of you take the time to share your talent. So thank you very much. Next, with our invocation, is Amy May. Amy.
Hello, everyone. Hopefully the dogs don't start barking. Good afternoon, President Jennifer, fellow Rotarians and guests. In honor of today's subject, I'd like to offer a prayer for the performers of this world who have been so heavily affected by the pandemic. Let's pray for their livelihood, health, and creativity, and that we get to see them on stage soon and in movies and in TV. Join me as I pray. Bless the creators, O God of creation, who by their gifts make the world a more joyful and beautiful realm. Through their labors, they teach us to see more clearly the truth around us. In their inspiration, they call forth wonder and awe in our own living. In their hope and vision, they remind us that life is holy. Bless all who create in your image, God of creation. Pour your spirit upon them that their hearts may sing and their works be fulfilling. Amen.
Thank you very much, Amy, for that. Now we've got our Sergeant at Arms with Bob Romero. Bob.
Dangerous times. You know, it's one of those things that I think we've all had kind of enough of elections and pandemics and all of those things. And but the one thing I did want to do today that these things have taught us is that we have to separate fact from fiction and truth from untruth. And so Sergeant at Arms today, that's what we're going to do. We're going to take a look at some facts, and you're going to have to pick out the facts and the truth from the options that are provided to you. So we'll start with time, and we can go ahead, Dwayne, and just roll through this. This Sunday, we will fall back with daylight savings time. And what states will not be joining us? The People's Republic of Idaho, or South Dakota, Arizona, Utah, Hawaii, or the state of ecstasy. Actually, the two states that will not be joining us, again, if you miss these answers, just send your money to Carolyn, and you can either wheel it in a wheelbarrow up to her office, or you can mail it if you'd like to do that, or you can just ask her to make a contribution on your account. But the answers are Arizona and Hawaii are the two states that are not joining us. If you said the state of ecstasy, they're actually not in a time zone, so that doesn't count. Next question. On Tuesday night, the Dodgers captured their first World Series since 1988. Kirk Gibson's dramatic home run was a defining moment of that 88 series. Which of these statements is true? His homer clinched the series for the Dodgers. Gibson's homer came off one of baseball's greatest closers, Goose Gossage. Gibson appeared as a pinch hitter when he delivered the walk-off homer. Vin Scully announced, "I can't believe what I just saw." Or Gibson hit the ball over the center field wall. Which one is true? The actual answer is number 3. He appeared as a pinch hitter when he delivered the walk-off. It was in the first game of the World Series. He hit it off Dennis Eckersley, and it was Jack Buck who said, "I can't believe what I just saw," and the ball went over the right field wall, if you're tracking other facts and details. Okay, Dwayne, next. Ben Roethlisberger and Tom Brady will soon pass John Elway and trail only Brett Favre for this NFL record. What is it? Is it most career passing yards, most career touchdown passes, most career completions, or most career fumbles by a quarterback, most times sacked in a career, or number 6, most career completions to a running back? Which of those will they soon move into the record books, probably at the top of the list within a year to a year and a half? And the answer is most times sacked in their career. Brett Favre has 525, and then John Elway at 516. Right now, Roethlisberger 511, and Tom Brady is at 506. So they're on their way to soon being the top 2 on the list. Next question. Now we're going to go to October 29th, a little this day in history. Which of these historical events did not occur on the 29th of October? Dedication of the Statue of Liberty, the introduction of the Charleston, which I understand Charlie Robin will perform for us in a few minutes. Sir Walter Raleigh was executed. The Black Tuesday stock market crash. A one-legged gymnast won 6 Olympic medals in a single day. Or the National Organization for Women was founded. Which of these did not happen on the 29th of October? The answer is number 1. The dedication of the Statue of Liberty actually occurred on the 28th of October. All the other things happened on October 29th. Another little this day in history, October 29th, 1964, the world's largest sapphire, the Star of India, was stolen. And which of these statements is not true? It was stolen from the American Museum of Natural History. The thieves came through a bathroom window that they had unlocked earlier in the day during visiting hours. The gem was protected by an alarm, but the alarm battery had died. The thieves also took the DeLong Star Ruby and the Eagle Diamond, and the thieves were caught when their car ran out of gas. Which one is not true of these? Actually, the last one. The thieves were caught 2 days later, and not because their car ran out of gas. All the others are actually true, including the fact that the alarm battery had died. And finally, on October 29th, is a date that the first ballpoint pen was made in America went on sale. And which of these statements is true? It went on sale at Gimbel's department store. The pens sold for $10 each. On that first day, they sold 5,000 of them. And they first went on sale October 29th, 1941. And by November 15th of that year, Bob Redmond and Keith Reif received their first D's in penmanship. So, which of these is actually true? The answer is number one. It went on sale at Gimbel's department store. The pens sold for $12.50 each. The first day they sold 10,000 of them. And the first day they went on sale was October 29th, 1945. And Bob and Keith did not even get graded in penmanship that early in their lives. So there we have it. There's your Sergeant at Arms again. Thanks to Rotary for this wonderful building that we have. And thanks to all of you who will send in your fines to Rotary to help support Rotary charities. Thanks.
Excellent job, Bob. Thank you so very much. So I did have a couple of presidential reminders, and I don't have every bit of detail right in front of me today, but in your email box, you have another reminder about an Imagine Scholar event tonight. So be sure to check that out and register. And also don't forget, in your mailbox last week was a postcard talking about a feast from west to east. So I hope that you can participate in those two events. So with that, we're moving a little ahead on our agenda time today. So we've got a wonderful amount of time to be able to hear from our speaker. And to introduce Charlie is Mike Norton. Mike.
Thank you, President Jennifer. Rotary, I am happy to introduce Charlie Robin. Charlie Robin is the CEO of the Capitol Theater Committee and oversees both the Capitol Theater and the 4th Street Theaters. He also currently serves on the Board of Commissioners for Washington State's Art Commission, and he's on the board of directors of Yakima Valley Tourism. As a native of St. Louis, Charlie is a graduate of Washington University in St. Louis, where he studied both business and music. He served 21 years as an arts administrative professional at the Edison Theater and the 560 Music Theater on the campus of Washington University, the last 15 years as the executive director. He's also ran an actual circus. He's coordinated entertainment for a sculpture garden. He created a production company to manage a national touring a cappella group for which he was the original baritone, and co-founded and managed a startup computer software development company for the healthcare industry. Charlie has a long history of serving his community with an emphasis on working with young people. He's taught art management for a dozen years, both at the undergraduate and graduate level. He is currently obsessed with knitting and singing, and I'm very happy to introduce Charlie Robin.
Well, thank you. I'm just honored. I appreciate Mina and the programming committee for inviting me to do today's presentation. But it has been said that there are a few things I enjoy so much as a tangent. So I was smart enough to go ahead and tape my presentation, which I'll then turn to Dwayne to begin, and then at the end I can answer questions and commiserate as best and in any way I can. Take it away, Dwayne.
At the Capitol Theater and the industry as a whole, we have great hope and expectation, with a fair bit of shared prayer, that there is a return to normal, even if we don't have a defined timeline for when that might be. The Broadway producers have made it clear that there will not be a return to live performances in New York City anytime prior to June 2021. And they've been clear that that is the soonest that their theaters will open. That decision impacts the potential for our favorite touring productions as well. The COVID crisis has required performance venues to rethink the way we deliver on our missions. And for the Capitol, one of the ways in which we have approached our separation is with a variety of self-produced videos, adding a bit of entertainment and education. It's probably not a surprise to anyone who has seen our collection of musical moments on social media, how much my husband and I are enjoying providing that particular offering. The joy I've had in working on these videos has had me revisiting the history of musical theater and the various creative forces and personalities that have made it the foundation of a multi-billion-dollar commercial industry, as well as supporting the vast array of nonprofit organizations and venues in every community, presenters and producers, professional and community theaters. I'll suggest that the real driving force behind the development of what we know as the modern musical theater industry is summarized in the phrase, by popular demand. So, if I'm any example of the basic development of the human species, arguable, I know, we have always been storytellers and singers as a means of storytelling. The ancient Greeks were presenting plays with songs, and the Roman comedies were including song and dance routines. But none of that would be ever described with our phrase musical theater. Where we can most specifically see the first signs of our current definition of musical theater is in the French and Viennese operettas of the 1800s. I will apologize in advance to any true opera fans, as I suggest no snobbery and my generalities are not intended to upset any purists. But opera ultimately originated in Italy at the end of the 16th century. And by the middle of the 19th century had proven its place as a principal Western musical expression. The language of opera and all of its terms are based in its Italian origins, but its popularity across Europe opened the door to works sung in French and German and other languages, of course, and ever more so in English, especially with modern and contemporary styles. In opera, the singing never stops. Even the speech-like parts, are called recitative. The music comes first. I mean, really, opera singers really love their vowels. Even the word aria is a single consonant wrapped by 3 vowels. But, the words can seem secondary. And I would suggest that is why so many people who only speak English can still appreciate opera sung in other languages. It's an art form that can be appreciated strictly for its musicality. And still, modern venues are regularly updating the technology that allows for instant translation for the audience to better understand the words. But it's the spectacle and grandiose aspect of opera that also makes it so expensive to both produce and attend. The peak of opera's popularity in the mid to late 1800s brought about the emergence of the operetta. And operetta was popularized in the Victorian era, mid-19th century, and it grew from the desire for shorter works and lighter subject matter. I'll suggest that they were also less expensive to produce and therefore more affordable to a greater part of the population. Operettas are less complex than traditional operas and are often, although not exclusively, sung in English, which certainly impacts its popularity among an English-speaking audience. The subject matter almost always is humorous, with plots bordering on the absurd. Romance, mistaken identity, cross-dressing, and confusion. These are more popular themes that result in a greater demand as well. And they certainly harken back to what we know of the comedies of Shakespeare. And for anyone familiar with, then British pantomime traditions of Christmas holidays, you can hear some of the direct parallels. So some of the best known examples of operetta were created by Gilbert and Sullivan. And this notable duo wrote 14 operettas together, with titles that include Pirates of Penzance, The Mikado, and HMS Pinafore, some of my favorites. And they're still popular today. All of them. And the success of pantomime and operetta proved a greater interest in the English market for a looser variety of entertainment. This was paralleled in the American market with the development of the minstrel show, vaudeville, and burlesque. This lighthearted variety format proved influential in the development of the musical comedy, which became popular at the beginning of the 20th century. One of the men attributed with giving musical comedy its distinctive sound and style was George M. Cohan. His first big Broadway hit in 1904 was the show Little Johnny Jones, which introduced his tunes, Give My Regards to Broadway, and I'm a Yankee Doodle Dandy. By 1920, he had created and produced 50 musicals, plays, and revues on Broadway, at one time with shows running simultaneously in 5 separate theaters. Some of his most popular song titles included You're a Grand Old Flag and Over There, made popular in the war. In the 1920s, the biggest names became Florenz Ziegfeld, Jerome Kearns, George and Ira Gershwin, Richard Rodgers and Lorenz Hart, Cole Porter, and from England, Noel Coward. The songs of these creators in that time are remembered far more than the shows from which they originated. But that was indicative of the early form of what was still becoming our modern musical theater. And the better known show title from that decade might be Showboat. So the 30s came. Broadway survived the Depression, but it certainly slowed its development. Again, the economic impact diminished the overall demand, which also served as the final nail in the coffin for vaudeville as well. By the 1940s and the recovery, a shift was apparent in the established musical comedy formula that was increasingly relying on the star vehicle for celebrities like Fred Astaire. This isn't surprising considering its roots in the headliner format of vaudeville. Despite a dysfunctional relationship, the partnership of Rodgers and Hart did deliver a variety of titles that represented this shift. Notably, Babes in Arms and Pale Joey. But even those shows are better remembered for the songs they included than the stories they told. And you'll hear a lot more from that period in cabaret and jazz clubs than you'll ever hear in your local theater programs. Oddly enough, it was Hart's greater interest in alcohol that had Rodgers take on a new creative partner, Oscar Hammerstein. And that became the true beginning of what we now know as musical theater. Two particular trends were occurring at that period that Rodgers and Hammerstein recognized and merged into their first project together. In the early 1940s, contemporary drama and literature had moved toward a greater realism. Consider the plays by Tennessee Williams. And the country's patriotic spirit, due to the start of another war, had its focus back on traditional American values. Thus was born Oklahoma. But the real innovation that defined the formula that Rodgers and Hammerstein created was the fully integrated musical play in which every song and dance developed the characters and or the plot. In opera, dance has traditionally been used more or less as a palate cleanser. It's a break in the action for the audience to reflect on the story while enjoying the spectacle, without a concern for the plot or getting anything new from the dance. And as we already mentioned, in opera, the singing basically never stops. For the most part, in musical theater, the words are the driving force. Just listen to Sondheim, but I'm getting ahead of myself. It's the combination and ratio of singing and speaking that creates the distinction. In more contemporary musicals, you can certainly find examples that break the rules like Rent and Les Mis, which are far more constant singing. But that early formula established by Rodgers and Hammerstein was quickly adopted by notables such as Irving Berlin in Annie Get Your Gun and Cole Porter in Kiss Me Kate as examples. For basically 30 years, the formula became set. It was a proven method, relatively easy to replicate, and was massively profitable. Where the introduction of cinema sped the demise of vaudeville, it fueled the fire of musical theater. The stage seemingly became the testing ground for choosing the next blockbuster movie musical. Almost immediately, the film industry was using the same musical theater creators to create original movie musicals, which were then later adapted for the stage as well. Then television emerged. In 1957, 117 million people across North America, the largest audience in history, tuned in for the production Rodgers and Hammerstein created specifically as a television musical starring Julie Andrews. That was Cinderella. And oddly enough, it was 56 years before it was adapted for a Broadway premiere. The thing is, the musical comedies were all about comedy and sentimentality. And while Rodgers and Hammerstein's shows had cheerful and uplifting songs included, they were also seriously addressing issues such as racism, sexism, and classism. Consider titles like Carousel, South Pacific, and King and I as easy examples. Still, the tried and true formula finally started failing as society became more and more attentive to all of those social issues that the stage had been exposing, which brings us to Hair, and also Jesus Christ Superstar and Pippin, the era of the rock musical, which was responding to more popular music styles, which were ever more present and in demand. From the beginning of the 60s with the Fantastics, the stories started becoming more intimate. The massive opening numbers were no longer the standard, and the themes got grittier and darker. But the general paying audience was split between those that relied on the familiar and latest version of the formula and the popular music creations. The revenues got a bit lost in the scattered focus of the industry. And then came Stephen Sondheim and the concept musical with titles like Company, Follies, and A Little Night Music. Well, and Michael Bennett with A Chorus Line. That struck a chord that carried us through the 70s and really set the stage for the key creators for the next 30 years. Sondheim, Andrew Lloyd Webber, Ahrens and Flaherty, Stephen Schwartz, Cadner and M, among many others. For what happened in the 80s, though, I blame Andrew Lloyd Webber and his Phantom of the Opera. Earlier in the decade, we got Cats and Les Mis. But from the moment that chandelier crashed down on the stage in Phantom, the focus on spectacle was again set in stone. The sets and special effects became characters of their own and major components of all the mega musicals that followed, from Miss Saigon to Spider-Man and the mess that was. The cost of producing these massive properties made it ever more difficult for shows to turn a profit, which then required the backing of multi-million-dollar corporations to get a show developed and promoted. Think Disney and The Lion King. It also had producers choosing popular and familiar titles that pulled from other media and were more often than not remakes of popular movies like Footloose and Saturday Night Fever. Fortunately, for the turn of the next century into the 21st, Broadway proved that it could laugh at itself, and we got the hit sensation, The Producers. Suddenly, comedy was back in vogue, and what followed was a flood of lighthearted and diverse adaptations and originals. Hairspray, Avenue Q, Spamalot, Book of Mormon, and Kinky Boots. The sets are grand, and making a profit is still one of the biggest gambles. But the massive success of Hamilton, a show that is not considered a comedy, has shifted the foundation once again. With the willingness of the general population to pay those prices for tickets, my best assumption is that contemporary producers are really working hard to figure out the new formula that made that show click, and what might work best now and maybe for the next 10 years. I don't think they're looking at 30. I suggest the key is ultimately social media, and yet again depends on the popular interest of the larger population. I think my greatest hope is that Frozen, Aladdin, and SpongeBob end up being more the side dishes rather than the full entrees that we can expect when we are all able to come together again to share the social spectacle that we all enjoy, that is the modern musical theater. So thanks for inviting me to share my thoughts, and I'm more than willing to answer questions as best I can. Thanks so much.
Charlie, thank you. What a wonderful presentation. I miss the Capitol Theater, and just seeing that picture makes me so anxious to go back. To thank you for speaking today. We do have a donation we're going to be making in your name to Yakima Rotary Charities, and we have quite a bit of time left, so I would really love to be able to do some question and answer period right now. If some folks have some questions, please unmute and jump in.
Hey Charlie, it's Doug. In the in the music business, the live shows and the big stadium spectacles have kind of taken a back seat because music is so accessible on the internet. How do you see that affecting stage productions and things like that?
It's such a massive part of our current conversation because the only thing that we feel that we can offer is live streaming and things that take advantage of the fact that we have stages where things can be recorded, but we can't bring an audience into them. Mm-hmm. The difficulty is we have spent decades reinforcing the understanding that it's the live experience that makes what we do so distinct and so unique. Mm-hmm. So to then have to shift to all the video components is kind of undermining all the work we've done. And it really isn't the same experience. It's not the same thing. It's because you can watch a movie musical and you can even get teary-eyed, but the way that you would get emotionally engaged when you have 1,500 people sitting around you is really distinctly different. And I think that that's why we as an industry are struggling so much, because we're trying to be relevant and trying to make certain there's still content there. But we're ultimately not competing with the other media in the same way, because what we do requires all of you. We can't do it without the audience. We can't, and even if you're watching it and it's taped with an audience, you're still separated and divorced from the experience a little bit. So I think that the emotional impact is distinct. And I think that that's why we are still so much in demand. People so regularly stop me in the market and at the gas station saying, "I miss you." And I would hope they miss me, but I know what they're really saying is they miss coming together as a community and enjoying that together.
I have a question.
Charlie?
Sorry.
Go ahead, Dana.
Thanks. Charlie, where do you think the next Stephen Sondheim, Lin-Manuel will be coming from?
Chicago. I am superbly impressed with what's happening in Chicago. The smaller theaters there, some of the major theaters there are really producing some very cool things. I am superbly impressed with the money that's coming out of Seattle. And we had the producers for Come From Away, Come and Speak With Us. And I've had the chance to keep up with them and connect with them since. They had an entire tour that was starting a new production that was starting in China just as the pandemic hit. So, you know, so these massive investments that have been made for what would be the next stage have really been lost, and bringing all these characters and all these people together again, based on everyone's timelines and all their commitments, is really weird. You know, in opera, performers are generally scheduled at least 2 years out, and the biggest performers are scheduled 5 years out. Heaven help they keep their voices that long. But the contracts are done that far out because the process and the projects and the spectacles are so expensive, they get everyone committed very early on. So a lot of my friends who sing in opera have commitments that are still scheduled for 3 and 5 years out. Our industry doesn't work quite on that timeline, ultimately because so many of the pieces, the players that are involved are a bit more replaceable than the big vocal names in opera. So I think that the recovery time is going to be quicker, but all of those projects that were in the works, it's a question about how are they going to come through. Chicago is such a tight community, and Illinois is a little bit more open than some other states, that they're still doing and developing works and things like that. You know, I think it's a joy to be able to get over to Seattle and see some things over there. But in terms of the next theater community that I think is doing some really exciting things, it would be Chicago. And the only one that I would add is that in St. Louis, they've got the 100-year-old plus Muni, the Muni. And if you look at the program listings and the bios for the performers that come to the Capitol Theater and are on Broadway, you'll see the Muni regularly listed as one of the credits. And what the Muni is able to do because of its particular creative leadership, they're creating works that are connected with the 4,000-seat Fox Theater in St. Louis that are testing grounds for New York. And I think that that's, you know, another one of those venues and producing companies that is got an eye on some really cool stuff. Yeah.
Charlie, this month on HBO, we are having opportunity to enjoy Spike Lee's filming of David Byrne's American Utopia. And I strongly encourage everyone to watch it. It is, David Byrne was Talking Heads in 70s, was he?
Yep.
And it's phenomenal, but you have to move the furniture because you'll be dancing around the room. So my question is this, Dave, that a show like that was a limited engagement from the start, right? And what, do you see that being new directions? And then to have Spike Lee envision filming it in such a creative way, is that a new kind of musical direction?
I think it's actually hearkening back to an older one. As I said, when television came in and they immediately recognized the vehicle that, you know, Julie Andrews as the new hot ticket, you know, was able to bring to the table. Television just grabbed on that. But PBS, you know, and into the 50s and the 60s, you got a lot of those that were being produced. And it was the New York stage versions that were being recorded and then sent out to the masses. And I think it was really instrumental in developing the love of Broadway, and especially the demand and the tourism to New York City. I think the thing that we're enjoying now, that I certainly am enjoying now, is PBS is doing a lot of the same taping. And so you'll get 4 to 6 of these per year. They're primarily taping them in London or in England, somewhere in England. And those are the programs that are the musicals that have gone from us to them, and then they're taping them and then they're sending them back to us on PBS because they continue to love a documentary. They continue to, in England, they continue to love this type of broadcast, and we're sharing in their commitment. And I think PBS is doing a really great service to keeping us engaged and interested in the new productions that are out there. The one that, I'm trying to think of the title real quick, An American in Paris, which we had at the Capitol, was one of those productions. And when I saw it on PBS, I said, oh, bring in that, bring it out, because it was so beautifully done, 5 camera angles and all of that. I think that's the opportunity that augments what we do in the live version. And again, introduces and invigorates an audience for live performance without necessarily supplanting it. Yeah.
Charlie?
Yeah.
I'm always kind of interested that, when you're in London, you go to the West End, the houses are pretty small, relative speaking to what we have to fill in this country, even at the Capitol. And so the economics of it, these spectacles and whatnot, what is kind of the future of the traveling show and whatnot coming to the Capitol? Because the costs obviously have to keep going up, just by the nature of everything. And, how does that really play? If the West End can do it in a smaller theater for longer times, we have to fill a lot of seats in a lot of our theaters.
For anyone who's ever had to sit in a London West End theater, at 6'6", I basically have to have a chiropractor because my general view is a full 180 twist to get my legs in, and I have to buy the seat next to me because there's no room for anyone else. They really do cram them in, and so many of their venues are so old that people were smaller or so old. So I think that you're right. It's the fact that what they do and how they do it is a model that has done it, but they also will just run things much longer. And, we have a lot of limited engagements and you got to see them quick or whatever. I think that the joy of the touring market is that you don't have to get all the way to New York to see these productions. And the thing that they're managing, and I'll use the example of Beautiful, which we had. I was in New York. I had one night came free, and I went to the agents and I said, look, you've got me for an evening. Which show do you want me to see that I'm going to like and I can bring to Yakima? And they said, oh, go see Beautiful. And I did not want to see this show. I did not want to see the show at all because it seemed like another one of those musical reviews. And I walked in and I was blown away by the way they created that show. But I was also really intrigued by how they were going to take what I saw in New York on the road, because it was multi-level and it was sliding sets, and it was the massive way in which they approach the development of a show that they know is going to sit down or expect to sit down for months or years on Broadway has to be different than the way they take it on tour. What we're seeing now so distinctly is the shift from a lot of those physical sets into projections. We're getting you're not even getting painted drops. You're getting video projection on the back of screens. They're using new technologies to provide the mix of effects that otherwise would be really, really expensive to put on a truck. So that's one way in which they're bringing their costs down. But it does mean that we have to stay more and more relevant. Well, like one of the big changes I anticipate we'll have to do in the next 5 to 10 years minimum, possibly sooner, is a balcony rail where we can support lighting and projection equipment off the front of the balcony. Now we have this gorgeous balcony, all that molding and all that is just stunning and beautiful. Y'all don't see it that much anyway, because you're all looking at the stage. It's me standing at the curtain looking all out at you that I get to enjoy that. But we need to do something that can accommodate the shift in technology requirements in our space that is limited by its 100-year-old preservation approach. So the technology is the way they're doing it. I think that we'll continue to see something like Spider-Man, which had it suspended over the house, ain't never gonna tour, thank God. They're not gonna do something. But even Wicked has components where in Broadway, it's above the audience and the like. They just reformat it to tour. So we're still getting those shows. They still see that the real money comes from this extended touring life beyond and during a New York run. And I think that's the really big shift, is they don't wait until the show is finished in New York before they start touring it to really take advantage of building it Hamilton's a perfect example of that. Yeah.
Charlie, is anyone looking at new theater design or how to renovate so as to be able to handle people during pandemics or epidemics? We've had quite a few of those in the last 20 years.
You mean theater designs and renovations?
Well, like Santa Fe, indoor, outdoor, something like that.
Well, I'm not allowed to use the word plaza because it gets too many people upset. But the ways in which we as a community provide for the various options, because there's a lot of stuff that can really work beautifully outdoors. And there was a time where the downtown summer nights were held on 4th Street. When I first arrived, they were over there. That would have been a perfect way in which, once we finish the balcony off the 4th Street Theater, you could have a performance up there with everyone, out on the street, close down the street and have something that way. I think that's one of the ways in which a redesign would work. And most specifically for this community, we all hate going indoors after Memorial Day. And we don't consider going back indoors until after Labor Day. And that's 3 solid months that we could be doing programming if indeed our options were more open. And I think that it means doing the things like completing the balcony off the 4th Street Theater, managing the balcony rail in there, working on the alley designs to beautify the area around the theater, and looking at something like the parking lot where the plaza was going to be as opportunities to be in advance, providing power and water and all the things that would allow us to more easily adapt the space for a stage and an outdoor performance. Does that answer that for you, Craig?
Yes, thank you.
Hey, Charlie, I have a question for you around, it sort of brings a little bit of the current political climate into this conversation. So
I'll be as nice as I can.
Forgive me a little bit for that, but I'm just wondering about, some of the older plays that have gone on tour forever, especially the musicals, have a lot of challenging, I guess is the best way to put it, content, to be politically correct. And as we've seen some of our statues that represent the history of this country being torn down, what do you think is going to happen to some of those musicals? Will they stop touring, or will there be an adjustment, or do you think we'll move forward through all of this and be able to have meaningful conversation around when we go to see those kinds of musicals? Or what do you think is going to happen? Are they going to go away?
Classics are classics for a reason. It's because they address something that is a bit more universal and timeless. Shakespeare is still performed, and you can find the most egregious examples of every ism that we have. It's like, it's all there. Othello and the treatment of the Moor and all of these particular ways in which we as a society have grown beyond where we were 500 years ago, 400 years ago, 100 years ago, or 20 years ago, is still part of who we are. So I think it's the shows that have the more timeless tale that say something beyond the misogyny or the racism or whatever else are the ones we're going to see regularly. And there's a reason why, those early ones of the State Fair is not something that we ever do again. Carousel, we just can't do. I'm just sorry. I mean, that in the Me Too movement, we just can't do carousel. That's just rife with it. South Pacific is difficult, but it also was already calling attention to the issue in a way that we could then do it. But then you got that whole, I'm going to wash that man right out of my hair. And so you've got racism and sexism. So how people address that becomes more a creative adaptation and becomes the job of the director and the cast to create a meaningful way of discussing it. And then for the presenter and producer to create a way of talking about it before and or after that allows us to see it in perspective to the time in which it was created, but also in the way in which it brought up an issue that we were barely discussing at the time. Not like it was ignoring it or, you know, inappropriate, but oftentimes they really were the beginning of these conversations. Shocking what Rogers and Hammerstein actually got away with.
Good to have those conversations, right? I think that that's healthy for us.
And that's what I love, post-performance discussions. I love coffee chats after the fact. How many people spend, you know, head to the bar and talk about the theater afterwards because it has you humming the song and it has you thinking about not only the characters, but the people and the like, yeah. And I can tell y'all talk about it because y'all catch me the next day and tell me you were talking about it. Anyone else? Cool.
All right, well, again, thank you so much, Charlie, for that. I love the discussion after your presentation as well. A little bit like your conversation about having a cocktail after the show to talk about it. It's really interesting to get everybody participating in that discussion. So thank you all, all of our fellow Rotarians that are on with your questions today. So we're going to move on to our Rotarians Are Going Places segment with Mamie Barboza. Mamie.
Thank you, President Jennifer. Good afternoon, fellow Rotarians and guests. I have 3 special Rotarians to highlight this week on Rotarians Are Going Places. First off, congratulations to Adrienne Garner, who was very recently promoted to grandma. This adorable little guy is her first grandchild, and his name is Tyson Marshall Gasta, and he was born on October 16th, 2020. He weighed 8.3 pounds and was 20.5 inches long. And as an added bonus, Esther Huey is his great grandma. So congratulations to both of them. And next is Rotarian Steve Hahn. After a 20-year break from drag racing, Steve recently won a race at the Wild Horse Speedway in Phoenix, Arizona, in a 1970 Plymouth Hemi-Cuda, I don't even know what that is, with a 426 Hemi racing engine, and he beat the defending national champion. So congratulations to Steve. Their final round win was 9.31 seconds at 148 miles per hour. So just a side note, at 150 miles per hour, a car has to have a parachute on it. So I don't even know how any of that happens, but congratulations to Steve, and thank you, Dwayne, for showing the pictures. And that concludes our segment.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. You are Rotarians Going Places, and thank you for joining us for our meeting today. Next week's program is going to be our traditional Veterans Day program with Don Langang, with USO Northwest speaking. Following that, after Election Day, we're going to hear from Charles Ross, and I can't even imagine what he's going to have to say to us about how elections work in general. Following that, our honorary Rotarian, Robert Dugani, who is an author, has a new book out, but he's going to be talking about the magic of writing just in general. So we'll look forward to that program as well. Rotarians, you are going places. Thank you for joining us today. We are officially adjourned. Have a great day. Charlie, thank you again. Exceptional program. It really is wonderful to hear the history like that. I grew up with my mom playing most of those 60s show tunes on vinyl in our house. So I've got a real love for some of those oldies but goodies. It's kind of interesting to think about the messaging and how it changes through the years, but it certainly developed a love of musicals for me personally.
It was a long time. I grew up really, really poor and with a family of 6 kids, and my father died young. So I was 14 before I actually saw a musical live on stage. And I think it was Peter Pan, and I was like escorting a bunch of Girl Scouts or something. And it was, okay, sold. You know? if ever a stereotype was, you know, ever underlined, there it is, gay man in musical theater. I completely bought in. And but it really has been doing all of the musical moments and trying to do the musings that I do after each one that has really reignited for me all of the conversations about, who these people were, the producers, as well as the actors, the directors, as well as the writers. It's been a lot of fun. Yeah. So something for people to watch should they be so interested.
I've managed to catch a couple of them, but I will do a better job making sure they're on the calendar. They've been wonderful. And I think it's true, when you have a love for something like musical theater. I'll never forget my first show ever that I saw live was Annie in London when I was 5 years old. And what I don't remember is so much the show, but just my love for it. And sitting in front of that record player with my stuffed animal Sandy, resurrecting memories, singing all those songs later was a big deal in my life and a great memory.
I love it. Love it. Well, again, thanks for the opportunity. I had so much fun, prepping that. So, and Southwest Rotary has already asked me to do it for them as well.
Oh, good. I'm so glad. That's one thing that I miss is knowing what all the programs are for the other groups. So I'm glad that they're aware of this one so that they can join in as well.
Yeah. Okay, Sony, where are you? That's mean. Is she still there? Is she frozen?
You can tell how far away she is if her Wi-Fi freezes up on her.
Doesn't look like an artificial background.
No, it does not.
It isn't. It is a real thing.
Do you know where she is?
I think she's in Mexico.
Oh, lovely.
Looks like Mazatlan, but I don't know.
Very cool, very cool. Okay, well, I will head out. Take care, everyone.
All right, thank you all very much. Have a great day.
Bye, everyone.